のかの夜空を行く待ちに待った思いを胸に星の長い今夜だけは止まれ織姫に会いに行く麗しの君よ変わられて見たことない着物黄金色の髪去年まで無口だったあなたは今年は落ちるならば一年ぶり君は変わないね驚いた僕の顔を見て笑うつつましやかだったあなたはどこにいてしまわれたのでしょう
Welcome back to Mangaka Americana. Today we'll be covering Lethal Venom Protector. It is actually the original Venom series. Where the character was the star of the book, and this actually was produced in the 90s during what's known as the comic bust, and it was. While the character was doing really well, it also fed into one of Marvel's problems. Everything the company did just made things worse for themselves. So rather than having, Venom number 1 through 70 or 100 or whatever, they took all of Venom's story arcs and broke them up into their own separate titles. The first being Venom Lethal Protector, because it would run for 6 issues, and then the one that came after, Funeral Pyre, was like 3 issues, and the whole point was to keep producing a number 1 because, hey, number 1s always sell better. But of course, all these number 1s were bought up by the same people, and so it gave false sales impressions, and so it just made the comic bust worse. But we did get a lot of cool stories out of that time period, especially for Venom. And the Lethal Protector, so who the hell was it by again? It's by Mark Bagley and Ron Lim. And it's actually pretty good. If you've seen the first Venom film starring Tom Hardy, and you read this book, you can clearly tell that this book was a massive inspiration for it. Even if only surface level. I mean, they're in San Francisco. You have the Life Foundation. Riot shows up. Although in the book, Riot doesn't really play that huge of a role, but, hey, whatever. And so, you got Lethal Protector. It's a 6-part series. And basically, what came before this was Anne Wang, Eddie Brock's ex-wife, had come back into his life. Venom and Spider-Man got into it. Some stuff was falling. Spider-Man saved the chick's life. And because of that, Venom in his mind, or Eddie in his mind, decided that Spider-Man wasn't such a bad guy. And so they decided to make a deal. Hey, you keep away from me. I'll keep away from you. And we'll be fine. So Eddie and Venom left and went back to San Francisco, which is where Eddie's originally from. And so what we have is, we got Venom Protector number 1, or part 1. There's a chick in an alleyway. She's getting mugged by some dude because, that's what happens, I guess. Venom swoops in, kills the dude, gives the chick her purse back. She's frightened out of her mind. She's tearing up and running off. He's having a good time. He's like, oh, I'm the hero now. He's swinging around. He goes to get a motel because he's homeless, right? Or he tries to get a motel room. The cops recognize him, so they try to arrest him. He subdues the cops, but he's telling himself, hey, they're just doing their job, so we're just not going to hurt him too bad. Although he does slap the cops around a bit. You go back to New York City. Peter Parker's at the Daily Bugle, and Dan Yurik's like, hey, man, there's some dude took a picture of Venom in San Francisco, He's like, oh, my God, Venom, I should have never let him go. Oh, I gotta stop him. I gotta, hound and harass. And so Spider-Man decides, I'm going to use some excuse as a photographer to go there to cover some story. There's these dudes in suits, right? And they're harassing these homeless people, and Eddie decides to suit up, become Venom, beat these guys up. Well, Spider-Man shows up, attacks Venom, because you think, oh, he's attacking the cops or the feds or whatever. Venom's like, hey, look, man, these guys are bad dudes. They're harassing these homeless people. Of course, these dudes start just shooting at him or whatever. Spider-Man's like, oh my God, maybe he's right. So he helps out, beats up these dudes, and it's on the news, right? And of course, you see this dude, right? this this dude, he's watching the news, and apparently this dude's son was killed by Venom. So he's like, hey, target sighted. He's getting some goons ready. We'll go back to him in a bit. And so these homeless people that Venom saved, they bring Eddie underground, right? He said, hey, you saved us. We want to, take you back to our place. And that's when these dudes in these giant mech suits, right, called diggers, they show up, and they're beating up Eddie or whatever. They're trying to kill the homeless people for some reason. Eddie turns into Venom, busts these dudes up. They're fine. They got sonic cannons. They got these big drills because there's these giant excavators, right, and they're underground. That's where these homeless people live. Well, they fall through the floor. And, at first they're just like, oh my God, we fell through time, because they're seeing all these old school buildings from like the early 1900s. And of course, turns out that's not what happened, is that these homeless people live under here because this is from the old earthquake. I think it's like 1907, called the Great Earthquake or whatever, that buried a large part of old San Francisco. And so these homeless people have set up shop here. And so, Venom fights all these dudes or whatever. Obviously, they die, so that he kills the dudes in the mechs, and they surround him. Of course, this chick Valsar was like, hey, he's a cool guy. He helped us out. And so they take him to their little makeshift city council, and they explain, like, yeah, there was a homeless dude who discovered this place, and we all kind of moved in, and it's been cool ever since. We set up our own little society here. And of course, Spider-Man's swinging around. He's like, man, I got to find out what Venom's up to or whatever. So he decides to break into a place, right? He does some research and finds Eddie's father, Carl. Although I want to say that in later it's retconned to be Charles, but whatever, we'll just call him Carl for now. And so go back to Eddie Brock. He's in front of this old makeshift underground city council, and they're like, yeah, we wanted you to stay, but majority rule, and we're voting you to get out because you might be a threat. You got this reverend named Rakeshaw. Yeah, he's this big reverend. He's got like one of those old school Southern Baptist ties, like, oh yeah, he's a demon sent by hell, and he's gonna kill us in our sleep. You have this one asshole who's like, yeah, man, yeah, get him. We should just kill him. The dude who's running the city council, like, all right, man, like, you guys need to chill out. We had our vote. He's leaving. And so Eddie's like, fine, look, man, I don't want no trouble. I'll leave. Peace out. So Eddie leaves, and he's swinging around. He's doing this thing, and everything seems cool for a while. Of course, Peter Parker, because he's a photographer, he's pretending he's like doing an interest piece there. He shows up at Carl Brock's house, Eddie's father, right? And he starts asking some questions. He's like, hey, you're Carl Brock, right? He goes, yeah. He's like, yeah, you're Eddie Brock's dad, right? Dude slams the door in his face. As you know from our discussion of Venom Lethal Protector, Eddie and his dad don't have a great relationship. And, it's for various reasons. And so he's like, man, I need to get this information. I have to come back. Well, Eddie finds out that the diggers work for this guy named Trace, I believe. What is it? Yeah. Yeah, Trace International. So he breaks into like the headquarters. He sneaks in there. He sneaks past the security and whatnot. He sees this big model of San Francisco, right? Specifically on the park. And apparently he's going to renovate, quote unquote, this park as a gift to the city. Well, the security catches them for some reason because, they're just using cameras. They light up Eddie. They shoot him. Of course, the bullet don't work because he's got the symbiote on. He busts out of there. Everything's cool. Or he starts smacking the guards around. Well, Peter goes back to Carl Brock's house, right? But as Spider-Man, he sneaks in. He's like, look, man, we need to talk. I need some information. Eddie, we go back. Eddie's beating up this dude. He breaks out. He's all depressed and whatnot. But then he starts getting attacked by these dudes, right? These high-powered dudes and all these, like, tech suits. They look like a bunch of Iron Man knockoffs. And I guess they're called the Jury. And we find out in part 2 of Lethal Protector that this dude who hired these guys called the Jury, his son worked at a place called the Vault. And the Vault, in case you don't know, was a big prison for supervillains that Venom was housed at one point before he broke out. Or before they broke out, I should say, to be correct. The dude's name is Orwell Taylor, his son worked there, and these guys that are, quote, the jury in these, tech suits, they were friends of his son. And so when Eddie broke out and killed all these guards and this dude's son, obviously these guys all want revenge. They were all in the military together and stuff like that. It's just really a plot thread. It's to give Venom somebody to fight. And so, he didn't mean to kill him, but, still. So we go back to Trace, and Trace is in there with his dude, right? And he's like, they're trying to figure out what's going on. He's like, well, I don't know. This is Venom guy. He broke in. He might be a problem. All right, we go back to Peter and Carl Brock. He's like, look, man, I still want some information about your son. And Carl's like, I have nothing to do with him. He's a bum and a loser and blah, blah, blah. Get out of my home or I'm going to call the cops. Well, Carl leaves, but then the maid, her name is Sharon, right? She comes up and she's like, hey, Mr. Spider-Man, I could probably give you the information you want. I've been his maid for years. So we go back, Eddie's swinging around. He's on the Golden Gate Bridge. And, here come these dudes, right? Here comes the jury. They're attacking him again. They're fighting a bit. And Eddie can't really blame the dad because he did kill his son after all. But he's just not going to lay down and die. So he fights these dudes, smacks them around a bit. He ends up turning invisible and escapes and sneaks off. Well, go back to the Brock residence, and the maid's telling Spider-Man a bit of his history. And turns out, whenever Carl met Jamie, his wife, he was super happy and whatnot. But then after she gave birth to Eddie, she died, and it kind of broke Carl's heart. And he just wasn't able to give the love to Eddie that he should have as a father. No matter how well he did in school, no matter how many sports he did, it was never enough. Now, it's not like he was neglected. He had all his bills paid. He had, the best toys, everything. But he just never had his father's love, which is something we explored in Venom Dark Origins. And there's actually a panel in this on this page right here that you see, it's at Jamie's grave, and you see Carl. You see the maid, and the maid's holding Eddie, but you don't see his sister. Because in Venom Dark Origins, he had a sister, Mary, who was older than him. And, she may be 5 years older. So she wouldn't have been very old at the time of her mother's death. But she's absent. Now, at the time, it was simply because the character hadn't been conceived yet, conceptually speaking. And that she was introduced in Venom Dark Origins. However, we've never seen her since. Of course, Dark Origins was produced mid-2000s, I think. And it wouldn't be until Donny Cates' run on Venom, which is like late 2010s, we find out why we don't ever see Mary Brock again. And it's actually, they do it through Donny Cates does it through a retcon. For those of you who don't know, a retcon is when they take something that's been established history and they change it. But they don't we're just going to ignore it. They will say something like, okay, well, this happened, right? But not the way you think. Or here's some extra detail that the original writer didn't have before. And it's really just to add things in there, really to work in new ideas into a character's established history. But we'll get back to that another time. So, Spider-Man, he leaves or whatever. He's like, man, I'm starting to kind of feel bad for Eddie. He's a jerk and he's got the symbiote with him, but, he in himself, he's not that bad of a guy. It's just, as we've discussed in Venom Dark Origins, he's really a victim of neglect, and that's kind of why his pathology is the way it is. He was never like some violent, horrible person. And of course, there's a news report about Venom because Venom's been in the area or whatever. The cops have had to deal with him a bit. And Trace, he's, watching the news. He's like, hey, what if I can get Venom and Eddie Brock to work with me rather than against me? Which, is pretty smart. So Eddie's out and about. Of course, the jury tracks him down. They attack him. And of course, they're really nothing to Venom. Eddie, beats these guys up quick, fast, in a hurry. But then he also gets some assistance from this attack helicopter. It turns out that this attack helicopter works for Trace. He's like, hey, man, come on board and we'll help you out. So Venom swings up on there, right? And on a security or a little video feed or whatever, you got Trace says, hey man, I want to hire you as my new head of security. And so he takes him all the way out to the Mojave Desert to the Life Foundation facility. And so Eddie follows this one dude in, right? He gets hit with some flamethrowers, and then he's introduced to a new dude called he's like, hey man, don't blame Roland. And turns out there's this one dude, God, what's his name again? Oh yeah, Carlton Drake. Now Carlton Drake was the dude we see in the first Venom film who runs the Life Foundation, and this is like their headquarters, right? And I guess, the goal was to trick Venom into coming here because I guess Trace was a board member for the Life Foundation, so he kind of works for this dude. And, they're going to basically knock out Venom and says, we're going to take your children from you. And so we get to part 4, Eddie and Venom were trapped in like this sonic bubble cage, right? And, they're using these machines to extract these seeds from Venom. And it turns out, these scientists have determined that Venom only had 5 seeds left. We learn in later stories that's not true. But of course, you got Earth technology, alien symbiote, whatever. They only know so much. And so they extract these seeds. And then you see, these dudes who have robbed a bank. We're skipping scenes now. Dudes are robbing a bank. They're escaping. The cops are after them. This guy, almost gets ran over while singing Billy Ray Cyrus. Spider-Man stops the car. He beats up the bad guys. The cops thank him. And he's like, hey, man, I need to borrow a quarter if that's cool with you. So the cop gives him a quarter. Why does he give him a quarter? Well, I'll tell you why. For those of you who may not know, the 20th century had these things called phone booths, all right? Because we didn't have cell phones back in the day. At least, it wasn't as widespread as it is now. And so if you were away from home, you had a place to call, you had to go to a phone booth. You had to pay a quarter or whatever. So that's what Spider-Man does. It really shows the age of this story. But he calls Mary Jane. He's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Here's a lowdown. Oh, there's been, sightings of monsters or whatever. They may be symbiotes. Who knows? He's like, all right, I'm going to go check things out. She's like, all right, cool. I'm going to go back to doing my jazzercise or whatever. And so we're going back to the Mojave Desert. And Eddie's trapped in this sonic bubble, and Venom's telling him, hey, we can't get out. The Sonics won't let us. But they're thinking, okay, what if there's another way? Venom tells Eddie, use your own strength to get through it. So the symbiote pulls back from his arm, and he's like, oh yeah, that's right. The Sonics hurt you, but they don't hurt me. And so, you gotta remember, Eddie Brock, in of himself, he has massive amounts of strength. He's not a superhuman, but he works out so much, and he's built up so much muscle mass. He's a pretty strong dude in of himself. So the symbiote pulls back, right? And we go to Spider-Man. He's in this mall. It's being torn up. People are being thrown everywhere. It's just a giant mess. He captures this chick that's, was flying around, and it turns out you see the symbiote. It's this chick who's covered in the symbiote, right? Because, she's got these large breasts or whatever. And it's red and yellow. She's got hair everywhere. This is the character that will be later known as Scream. Fun fact, none of the symbiotes in this story are actually given names. Matter of fact, they're not named until the Spider-Man Venom Separation Anxiety video game. Right now, they're just symbiotes. And so he's like, oh my god, oh, this is, so crazy. Oh, I'm probably gonna die. So we go back to the Life Foundation, and Eddie Brock's containing this little this thing, right? And of course, Carlton Drake explains his whole evil plan. He's like, yeah, we the Life Foundation, all these rich people that are scared that the Russians are going to attack, because this is still during the Cold War, or at least, shortly after. And so we built this little sanctuary way out in the desert, but we need people to police it, right? Because, these people are paying us a lot of money to keep them safe in case, there's ever any kind of nuclear war or whatever. And so this machine has artificially germinated the seeds we pulled from you, and we decided to bond these things to a few of our guards to make the perfect police force. And so Eddie again has his own natural limbs exposed because the symbiote pulled back, and he's able to push through this little sonic bubble cage he's in. He grabs on the guards, he's choking them out, he throws the dude, smashes the controls. Carlton Drake's like, you idiots, Brock has Olympic level strength, you set the decibels too low. Venom gets free, they're tossing dudes around, but they hit him with the sonic cannons, and so they throw him back in the cage. Okay, and so we're going back to the underground, right? This little underground San Francisco, and you got this one chick and her son. Chick's name is Elizabeth, and I think in the future story, Eddie actually dates her temporarily, but I don't think that lasts. You got the one dickhead from earlier with the Reverend, and the Reverend's like, "Oh, it was a good thing we got him out of here because God will protect us. Praise Jesus." And she's like, "Yeah, if those dudes come back though, we're kind of fucked, man. So you better hope God shows up." Anyways, we're going back to the mall. Eddie, or not Eddie, but Spider-Man, he's fighting Scream. She's tossing him around. Of course, he points out that she's not really an experienced fighter, and he gets the better of her. She calls in, for her evac. Of course, to get away like any bad guy, she throws a dude towards the window. Spider-Man catches him. He goes to the roof to find the chick. Scream's already in this little hovercraft, this transport, and it's flying away. But he shoots a web line. It takes him to back at Trace International or whatever, his headquarters. He's torturing this homeless dude that they captured to find out where the homeless people are staying under the park, because he's got to get rid of them for some reason. Part of his whole evil plan. Of course, Spider-Man shows up at the Life Foundation, and he's sneaking around, right? And he decides to just expose himself to one of the guards. He makes some lame ass joke, and then here comes some more guards showing up. He's like, "Oh, well, I gotta remove direct approach from my list of options." Oh, well, first off, you're Spider-Man. You're one of the sneakiest dudes on the planet. And you're in this underground base in the middle of the desert, surrounded by God knows what, and you just decide to expose yourself. Yeah, that's kind of stupid. Well, he's obviously there to save Eddie Brock and Venom. And the Life Foundation decides to rip the symbiote from Eddie Brock to study it or whatever. And he's like, "Yes, you're too late, Spider-Man. Eddie Brock is dead." And he's laying on the floor all spazzed out. Because you got to remember, most symbiotes bond to the nervous system of the host. And so whenever they ripped it from Eddie, using their special tech or whatever, it was ripping something from outside his body, from his nervous system. So it threw him into shock. Newsflash, he's not actually dead, but whatever. And turns out, oh my God, there's 5 symbiotes. You got Scream, who's red and yellow. You got the one that's later known as Lasher. He's green, has tendrils. You got Phage. You got Agony. You got Riot. And Riot was the one that was bonded to Roland, or what was this dude's name? But yeah, the dude who was the bad guy in the Venom, I don't remember his name, right? Carlton Drake. Yeah, he was the one that was bonded to Carlton Drake, but obviously that's not the case in the book. It's bonded to some random guard that works for the Life Foundation. And so, okay, what are we in? We're in part 5 now. Cool. So you see Eddie, right? He's laying on the ground naked. He's got his 90s mullet all over the place. His eyes are wide open. He's drooling. He looks like he's either got the best painkillers in the world, or he's just getting the blowjob of his life. But man, he looks zoinked out. And so this dude's like, "Oh yes, he's dead, and he's the reason you came here, so you can just leave." Spider-Man's like, "Yeah, I really doubt he's actually dead, dude. Trust me, he's been through a lot worse." And of course, the doctors are on the other end, "Oh yeah, we had a pulse. Turns out he's just knocked out." Spider-Man's like, "Yeah, see, I told you." Well, dude gets pissed off. He just shuts the TV. And so they decide, "Hey, just take Eddie Brock to dissection. We're going to just do some random mad scientist experiments on him, whatever." Well, here comes the 5 symbiotes. Spider-Man's like, "Oh my God, oh." So we're going to the park because, this story just jumps all over the place. They're setting up the demolitions to renovate the park, quote unquote, because, all this evil business stuff. Going back to the Life Foundation, again, the story just jumps all over the place. But yeah, we're to dissect Eddie Brock. Of course, he wakes up, chokes the dude out. He's like, yeah, my other taught me to resist pain and to recover from it quickly. Haha. And I won't give you time to strap me in because I'm big and naked and angry and I got a mullet. Roar. And it's just a naked man with a mullet wrestling a dude. It's a wonderful sight, I suppose, if you're into that sort of thing. So this other dude hits him with one of the sonic guns, right? He's like, oh yeah, haha, I got you now. He goes, no, sonic gun, are these blasted things everywhere? Certain frequencies are one of the few things that can cause my other agony. But there's one thing you should know. I'm not with the symbiote right now, dude, because you guys are stupid and you took it away from me. So that sonic gun doesn't mean jack to me, son. So he says, bitch, please, smacks the gun out of his hand. He's like, I'm big, I'm naked, and I have a mullet, because it's the 90s. And he starts choking this dude out. Just knocks the dude out, right? Meanwhile, you see Spider-Man, he's fighting the symbiotes. Nothing's working. They're eating his webs, spitting them back out. One of them has acid. One of them has hammers. Here comes Eddie Brock, right? He's like, these are the offspring of my other, but they haven't had time to bond with their host. It's like, Eddie, don't. He's like, and he's like just showing up naked because, of course, because I must. They're still innocent and may yet be saved because I got a big complex. Come to me, children, and together we may right the wrongs done this day. Come to me. Meanwhile, standing there naked, as the day he was born, well, they all like shoot like hammers and clubs and whatever, and just like smash him in his face. He's like, yeah, I don't think that went as well as I had hoped. Well, yeah, you're walking around like a crazy naked guy. You are a crazy naked guy, looking like the Flesh from Action Team Now, and you're dealing with a bunch of, hyped up guards who are bonded to symbiotes. I mean, how did you think it was going to go? I mean, imagine, pause, imagine for a second, you're walking around, right, and you're just, like, exposing yourself to, like, some random crazy people, and you're naked, you're like, yeah, come to me, come, let's all come together. Yeah, how is that going to play out? I mean, so anyways, we're in the underground city again, right? Beneath the park. And, you have these, two of these homeless dudes, and they saw, like, Trace was, like, setting up explosives in the park. And, like, the dude who leads the city council, I guess he's the mayor. I don't think he is officially, but that's kind of what he looks like. And, of course, this city council, they're all discussing, like, hey, man, maybe we shouldn't have kicked out Eddie, because, seems like this Tracy just like just blow up the entire park and kill us for seemingly no reason. And of course, you got the Reverend. He's like, no, he's a demon, a murderer. Praise Jesus. He could have corrupted us all. He would have killed us in our sleep and stole our Apple Jacks. And of course, the one dude's like, look, man, shut up already. All right. We got our vote. He left. But guess what? It's not going to help us now. And so everyone just like shuts up because this dude's just clearly out of his damn mind. Okay, so many miles away, we're back at the facility in the desert. And so they decide to go to the dissection lab because that's where the symbiote is. And so Spider-Man webs up a door. It doesn't work. They get these sonic guns. They shoot the symbiotes when they bust through. One of them had ducked out of the way, so it's causing trouble. And so they decide to get back to the dissection lab. Eddie frees Venom. They rebond. He's looking all badass in his like 1990s blue and black shades and whatnot. So I think it's Phage. Yeah, Phage comes in. They're attacking Venom Spider-Man. He's got Venom in a headlock. He tells Spider-Man, hey, find the button that activates like the sonic cage thing they had me in, and I can throw him in there and he'll be good to go. Spider-Man's like, look, man, what button is it? There's this big machine. They have numbers on them. Nothing's labeled properly. And so he decides to hit a random button, and it turns out it's actually the button that would mature the symbiotes up whenever they took the seeds out of Venom, right, to germinate them. Well, it hits Phage in the arm, and it ages that part of the symbiote up to where it's like falling apart and stuff. And Venom's like, hey, that's the key. Maybe we can use this aging beam to like kill the symbiotes. They're not fully bonded to the host, so the host should be fine. Spider-Man's like, should, so you don't know for sure? It's just a random guess you're taking? Venom has a tendril around Spider-Man's neck, chokes him out. He's like, look, man, I ain't got time for, this, hey, let's just weigh the odds kind of thing. That's all you ever do is weigh the odds. Let's think about it. Let's consider all the options. And you know what? More people die because you hesitate. So he chokes him out, right? Venom works the machine because they were in there. They knew what buttons work for water rudder because, they watch the entire process. The other symbiotes break in, shoots them with these big beams or whatever, and just turns the symbiotes to dust. The hosts are fine, just like Venom had thought. And, Eddie's like, or Spider-Man's like, hey, man, that was a dirty trick. I won't forget it. You gambled with their lives. He's like, really, Spider-Man? The humans are still breathing, aren't they? There's no pleasing you. Carl Drake's like, oh my god, everything's ruined. Spider-Man ruined us again because I guess Spider-Man's been involved with the Life Foundation before. And so this dude's like, oh, we're just going to get out of here and just clean house. So activates the self-destruct. Spider-Man's like, oh my god, like these guys are going to blow up a base again because this is what they do apparently. So you see all these transports flying out. Spider-Man hitches a ride on one of them. He's like, well, I'm sure Venom escaped. Of course, Venom's like in this truck, right? He's got the dude like kind of strangling him a little bit with the tendril. He's like, you're going to go to San Francisco. It's because, I got things to do, people to see, entrails to devour. Because, he's like a badass back in the 90s. And, while he was saving people, if you were a bad guy, Venom was going to kill you. He was like, what Spider-Man, if Spider-Man had been like this from the get-go, you realize how many people just wouldn't have not been killed by supervillains or whatever. But, Spider-Man doesn't listen because he's got this, I can't kill, and blah, 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 and everyone deserves to live. Okay, sure, tell that to the people who died. But anyways, it's back at now we're at Trace's, Roland Trace, that's his name. We're back at his, mansion or whatever, and his head of security is freaking out. He's like, oh my god, all the guards are knocked out. Here comes Venom. He's like, I'm going to get you. He's like, no, you're that thing. He's like, and Venom's like, what's happening beneath the park? He's like, you're going to tell us. He's like, no, not this time, because I got a gun. Ha ha. He shoots Venom. Of course, it doesn't work, and the dude acknowledges that. But it just distracts him for a second. He goes in this little panic room, right? It's got this big vault door, and then he's got this laser grid that goes all over the place. And of course, like I said, it's a laser grid. Of course, it's got holes in it because it's a grid. Venom just shoots a little tendril through there, chokes the dude out. He's like, yeah, you're going to suffocate if you don't turn that off. Ha-ha. Of course, the dude deactivates it. Eddie's threatening his life again. He's like, going to poke his eyes out. He's like, fine, look, man, I'll tell you what you want to know. All right. A long, long time ago, he says, it was the year 1906. A foreign power hostile to the United States, okay, yeah, that's a weird typo there, sent a secret ship, or a secret shipment for one of this bottle of water is making me mad right now. Anyways, sent a billions of dollars of gold to finance a group of anarchists, but they didn't count on the great earthquake. Because, there was an earthquake back then. It's an actual thing. But anywho, and so, the earthquake buried all the gold or whatever, and because, part of that city got buried in the ground because of the earthquake. It got built over. They put a park there, and, it's been missing ever since. But then I guess the Trace dude, Roland, he was buying things for his private collection, like art or whatever, and he found this document that said there's a bunch of gold in the park, and so he located it or whatever. But because it was technically on city property, if the city knew about it, they could claim it at any time. And so, that's when they discovered, hey, there's this little society living in the park. And so basically they're witnesses and this dude needs to get rid of them. And so he devised his whole, hey, I'm going to just renovate the park, basically killing all the witnesses with all these explosives where that are pointing downwards, and find the gold and get it for myself. And the dude tells Leia, yeah, it's going to be at dawn or whatever's going to happen. So Venom gets mad, knocks the dude out, and, races off. Of course, the park's all sectioned off or whatever, so that, there's no additional witnesses or whatever. And so Spider-Man goes to the park, Venom sneaks around, Venom gets attacked by Spider-Man. He's like, I don't know what you want with this Roland Trace guy, but you're probably just going to kill him because you're evil and you're a psychopath. Venom wraps Spider-Man up with the symbiote, right? He's like, look, man, people are going to die. So either you can help me or you can stand against me. If you stand against me, people are going to die. He's like, please, man, I'm asking you very nicely to help me. Spider-Man's like, oh my God, I don't get it. Ever since Eddie Brock joined with that living costume, all he's want to do is kill me. So basically, Spider-Man decides, hey, maybe I should, give him a chance. He's got to be telling the truth because he could kill me right now, but he's choosing not to. And so they decide to team up, right? They attack these guys. They try to blow stuff up. Here comes the Digger, mech suits again. And it's all going back and forth. And of course, the underground city mayor and like the one chick, right? They're watching Eddie. He's like, hey, look, this guy's actually risking his life for us again. And so they're taking down these mechs. Roland Trace, he's freaking out. He's like, oh my God, it's ruined. It's all ruined. Oh, they're going to send me to prison and take away my company or whatever. So he goes to this little trailer that's on site, right? And he's going to like just deactivate, or he's going to activate these bombs anyway, just blow stuff up. And of course, Spider-Man's finding these mechs. Venom and Eddie, they just they're going to just go after this dude, right? So they go to this trailer because he's hiding out in there. But of course, there's a big fire around there now because a spark landed on some fuel. And, Eddie and Venom use themselves like, hey, we may die in the attempt because, it's fire, but we have no choice. We have to save these people. And so they just shoot like this giant ball of like symbiote stuff into the trailer, busting it. It wraps around the dude. It grabs him, pulls him out. And, Spider-Man stops the last of the mechs. He's like, all right, hey, man, oh my God, he's on fire. And so, he beats up the last dude. He's like, Eddie, geez, you went into the flames just to get Trace, but the agony, how could you put yourself through something like that? He's like, would you have done any less? Well, I guess not because I'm Spider-Man. He goes, well, here comes the sirens. I guess I better take Venom into custody. He's like, but man, why does that make me happy? Obviously questioning the fact that, hey, maybe Eddie and Venom aren't so bad after all. Of course, they slip away because they changed their clothes into a hoodie or whatever. Of course, Trace has been stopped. The homeless people are safe. And of course, Spider-Man calls Mary Jane. He's like, hey, I guess I'm just going to come home because I can't just spend the rest of my life tracking down one dude. She's like, yeah, man, I kind of told you that. Being kind of silly. He's like, all right, well, I'll see you now. We'll hop on a plane. And of course, you got this little epilogue, right? Apparently, Trace, while being interrogated by the officials, told him where the gold was, so they found the gold, which, from the looks of it on the panel, it's like 10 foot deep. He didn't have to blow up a whole underground city. But, whatever. He had to be a villain. And, of course, Eddie's musing to himself. He's like, I guess that puts me back to square one. No home, no prospects, no future. And, of course, Elizabeth, the chick who was kind of nice to him, and I guess, like, the mayor, he's like, they bring him back to the underground city. He's like, yeah, we took a second vote, and we decided, you should stay here. You risked your life for us on 2 separate occasions. Clearly, you're not that bad of a dude. And, like, we want you to be our neighbor. And, of course, the Reverend's like, oh, y'all be sorry because he's a demon, and God says, he's like, look, man, everything's cool. I'll hang out here. If you guys have any problems, I'll take care of those problems because, we're Venom. And, that's Venom Lethal Protector in a nutshell. Good story. I mean, it's a good read. If, you want some good 90s action, very straightforward plot. Here's a bad guy, here's a good guy, here's someone who's kind of in the gray area. It was really a breakout thing for the character of Venom. Now, is it like legendary proportions? Like, oh my God, like you've gotta read the story. No, it's something that like will change your life or anything like that. But it is a good read. I mean, you can get it cheap on Amazon, maybe like $5-10. Yeah, go ahead and pick it up. Especially if you're a fan of Spider-Man, if you're a fan of the Venom character. If you like the first Venom movie, you'll probably like this book because it has a lot more detail in it. But yeah, go ahead and pick it up sometime. And this was Venom Lethal Protector. A very, very 90s story. The art, the writing, everything. But like I said, it wasn't bad. So, yeah, until we meet again. Later.